guys, welcome back to Linda's Prepper Kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about rationing of food and what our list of ration food would look like today. Back in the 1930s, as our economy declined, it put our country into what I'm going to call the D word, and caused a lot of foods to be rationed. People stood in long lines to get their ration cards. Certain foods were luxuries, and some of their most basic food became a luxury to them. And as our country progresses nowadays, it looks like we're heading in the same direction. So I wanted to put together a list of things that I felt would be on the list today. These are on here for one reason or another, whether it be from shortages, crop failure, countries not exporting certain foods because of the way things are now. There's many factors to weigh this in. This is not an exact list of things that's going to be on the list. This is just my guesstimation, I guess you could say. This is my best guess as to those things. All these things, you want to make sure you have plenty of these stockpiled, because all the things happening in the world today are not easy, quick fixes. These are going to take years to fix. It took years back in the 1930s before rationing. It was in the 1950s before rationing. I think it was 1954. I could be wrong, but somewhere along that time when all food was finally finished rationing. So you need to prepare for a long time for these, and you need to get a good stockpile of all of these things. So let's just go ahead and get into the list. So the first thing I have over here is flour. We know what's going on with our wheat system, so that to me automatically puts these on the radar of rationing. You need this to make bread, thickening agents, sweet treats, cakes and cupcakes and pie crust and dumplings and all kinds of things. You need to have plenty of flour. And with flour, it's not pictured here, but I would also include yeast in this. If you can get your hands on a stockpile of yeast, make sure you store that in the freezer. So yes, so flour. Baking powder. You need baking powder to make biscuits and all sorts of recipes. Vanilla extracts to make your cakes, and you can stockpile any kind of extract, lemon, raspberry, blueberry. There's all kinds of flavors of extracts out there. Whatever flavors you like, I suggest you get you a good stockpile of those going. Sugar was one of the first things put on the ration list in the 30s. And as we know, it's not being exported out of countries. They have put a huge limit on it. It's not the only place. I think it was India that limited the export of sugar. We do, however, get sugar other places, but it will be on the ration list due to the shortages. And I just happen to have this up here. Molasses. You're going to want to make sure you have molasses so that you can turn your granulated sugar into brown sugar. Also at the top up here, as you know, eggs have been an issue for a long time. They have skyrocketed in price. Back in the 1930s, they got 1 egg per person. I believe it was per week. I could be wrong on that. But today is different than the way it was back in those days. There's not nearly the amount of farms or people that just were self-sufficient like homesteaders. So you can't just go to your neighbor and say, hey, I'll trade you this for that. It's not that easy nowadays. A lot of these products, you want to make sure that you're stockpiling, because you can't get them as easily as what they got them in those days. We just don't have the same resources they had. So eggs is something you want to make sure you have a good stockpile on. Dehydrate your eggs if you can. As you see, I have a box of eggs that are also on here. Those will be going on the dehydrator to make dehydrated eggs. Of course, August Farms and other companies like that sell powdered eggs. So just make sure you have a good stockpile of eggs on hand. Fresh fruits and vegetables is something else that we're having issues with today. You get them from the store, you bring them home, and they're like either already rotten on the inside or they go bad within a day or two. So you want to make sure that you're putting up a good stockpile of fresh, some kind of vegetables. Potatoes were on the short supply list. So those two will be on the ration list. Back in the 30s, potatoes was a staple in their meals. There was an abundance of onions and potatoes during that time. So they ate tons of potatoes. Well, today they are on a short supply list. So I suggest that you you can dehydrate. These are the frozen little squared hash brown potatoes out of the freezer section. These would be wonderful to put in soups and stews. Instant potatoes, canned potatoes. You can even pressure can your own potatoes. I don't know if you're anything like me. I'm a meat and potato type woman. I love my potatoes. So you want to make sure that you're got a good long stockpile, because these are a belly filler, a meal stretcher. These are almost like a staple. So I suggest that you have an extra large supply of potatoes. The dairy was on very short supply and was on the ration list in the 30s. That included cheeses. So make sure that you're trying to stockpile some form of cheese. Cheese makes all the casseroles and things taste so much better. There's cheese dip, cheese whiz, powdered cheese. You can freeze cheese, anything that you're freezing, like maybe your eggs or some cheese or even your meats or whatever. Those things are great to have on hand. I highly recommend that you keep a fully stocked freezer, but we all know that the freezers do come to an end. If the slightest little thing happens and that electricity goes out and you don't have a way to keep that refrigerator going, everything in it spoils. So you want to make sure you have shelf-stable foods. Everything I mentioned to you today needs to be shelf-stable. Y'all, sorry about the noise in the background. That's my granddaughter. So make sure you're stockpiling plenty of cheese, milk for your recipes, butter. I recommend that you put a freezer full of butter, and I also recommend that you take and make ghee out of a lot of your butter. Make sure you have plenty of ghee on shelf. It's great to have for cooking, as well as that good buttery flavor in your foods. Unfortunately, chocolate is going to be on the list as well. We already have the Hershey's company made their statement about not able to keep up with the demand of things and the supply chain issues on their chocolate. So make sure that you have plenty of baking cocoa or little miniature candy bars, whatever, something to help you with your sweet tooth. But I do suggest you have the cocoa for baking. You can make brownies and cakes. Yes, even in times like that, you still, the body still craves certain things. So it is nice to have something on hand to make those with. Also, we do know that cooking oil is on the list of shortages today. So naturally, these would be on the ration list. And when they ration you, you get rationed. You get a bare minimum. So you definitely want to have a good stockpile of these things. So I have for show on here some Crisco that you could use. This is the butter flavored. Would be great for using to make biscuits and give it that buttery flavor, as well as vegetable oil. You could stockpile olive oil, any kind of oil for cooking, especially if we're having to do any outdoor cooking. You want it for your cast irons and things like that. Meat is definitely on the list. We have plenty of cattle going into slaughter nowadays. due to many factors. So right now there might be an abundance, but the abundance is going to come to an end. Meat was on the ration list in the 30s, and it will be on the ration list today. Also, don't forget to get your bacon while you're at it. Coffee, y'all. Coffee was on the list. I don't know about you, but coffee is very important to me. I think in this day and age, well, I don't know, maybe at all times, coffee has been a pretty pretty good staple in every American and house, even all around the world. So I doubt that you want to go without it, just like I don't. So make sure you got a good stockpile of coffee going. We do know that the crop has been not very good in the last year or so, and that they have predicted shortages, so we're definitely going to have coffee on the list. Cornmeal. During the D time, they had a lot of cornbread with their meals. They used a lot of cornmeal for frying fish, making hush puppies, cornbread to go with their potatoes, to go with their beans, or just whatever. So I do suggest that you add cornmeal. It very well may be added to the list, and it may not. It was not on the list in the 30s, but I would want to say it probably will be there today. So these are just a few things that I've come up with. And as always, don't forget your spices, y'all. You want your foods to taste good. You want to be able to spice them up. So make sure you got your spices and your vinegars. I'm going to add vinegar to the list as well, because you're going to need that in preserving food, pickling food. So add vinegar to the list as well. This is just a small list. I'm sure there were many more on the list back in the 30s, and there are probably many, many more on the list today. So I hope this has been helpful, help you focus in on what you need to be shopping for, and keep in mind that this is not a quick fix. Keep on keeping on, y'all. I'll see you next time back at Linda's Prepper Kitchen. Bye, everyone.